Okay, well, thank you, Alessandra, so much for sitting down with us at Longevity Blog to discuss OS-01 Shield today. We're really excited to talk about skin protection from UV damage, and in particular, releasing this little sunscreen here, which I've been using and enjoying. Has a pretty interesting backstory. I'd like to start there. And in our previous interview with your CEO and co-founder, Dr. Carolina Reese, we learned about OneSkin's unique tech where you guys actually grow human skin equivalents in the laboratory and expose them to UV damage. It's really fascinating technology. It's quite novel and innovative, and it's your unique secret sauce. So, can you just tell us a little bit about the background of using that technology to develop a sunscreen?
Hi, Nick. It's so nice to be here talking to you today and digging into more of the science behind one of our products. So OneSkin, the company OneSkin, we started like with the goal to understand skin aging. And how we do that is like going to the lab, replicating skins in the lab, growing skins in the lab, and understanding the changes that are happening during the aging process. One of the biggest causes of skin aging is also UV damage. So UV causes acceleration on the aging process of the skin. So we are able to, here in the lab, to get samples of skin, either like we build those skins in the lab or we receive leftover of plastic surgery. We can expose this to UV radiation and we can understand at the cellular level, at the molecular level, what's happening to the skin. Because we know that like when we expose a lot to sun, we can have sunburn. With time, we can see our skin getting wrinkled, sagging. But what's happening deeper on the cellular level is what we are able to do here in the lab. So we are able to understand the mechanism inside of the skin. And using this platform, we identify the OS-01 peptide, and we also like test all our formulas to measure the efficacy of the formulas before launching to the market.
Right. And so this is really fascinating because you're in the laboratory working with real human skin, whether that's human skin equivalents that you've grown, or you just mentioned something really interesting, which was leftovers from plastic surgery. So tell us a little bit about that part. How do these human skin equivalents or actual human skin samples get used in the laboratory to understand photoaging?
Yeah, so I mean, we have some partnerships and we are able like to receive pieces of skin that, as I'm saying, it's either leftover, mainly through abdominoplastic surgeries when you remove excess of skin from the abdomen. So we are able to clean the skin, cut into small pieces, and you can treat the skin. It's really like it's a piece of your skin, like of a human skin. We can treat topically with a sunscreen, and then we take to an incubator where it has UV light. We radiate that skin, and then after a few days, we can analyze, like cut down that skin and analyze at the cellular level, also like extract the DNA of the skin, and we can like understand the changes that are happening in the cellular and molecular level of the skin.
Right. So you would do something as sophisticated as taking these samples of skin and applying the OS-01 peptide, applying OS-01 Shield, the sunscreen, and then having samples that aren't actually protected at all and comparing the differences you see in the damage within that skin. And is that correct? And if so, could you just elaborate a little bit on how that works?
Yeah, it's exactly what you said. So basically, if I get a skin and I expose it to UV, what we will see is a like increase of markers related to aging and to cellular senescence, meaning that the skins are getting to become damaged and they can either become senescence or still proliferate and propagate some damage, which is bad because can lead to a skin cancer. And we can track those markers that are correlating with this accumulation of damage on the skin. Also, the release of inflammation. So after UV exposure, if you don't have any protection, you increase the amount of inflammation on your skin. And what this will lead is to a skin that starts to break down more collagen, which will lead to more wrinkles, and sagging of the skin. So we're able to see that, okay, if I have no protection on the skin and I expose to UV, this is what's happening. So now what OS1 is capable of doing on that skin? And now what if I add a sunscreen to that skin? How I'm protecting even more like from this UV damage.
Right. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, and you've mentioned a few different terms. Let's go into those in no particular order. Let's start with senescence. I've noticed that the language that you're using, as you understand the science better of the OS1 peptide, to be senescence blocking. This is some key language that's emerged and describing how that peptide is working to protect the skin. So how is that related to UV damage, and what does it mean to be senescence blocking?
So senescence blocking is a term that we are using to describe our peptide. So cellular senescence is a process where the cells start to accumulate damage and they stop dividing, becoming senescent cells, secreting inflammation. And this is a regular process that happens in our body to kind of avoid the cell to become cancers. But when we are growing older, usually like our immune system clears out these cells, but as we are getting older, this stops to happen and we start to accumulate those senescent cells in the skin. So they start to act like zombie cells. We wish they were dead, like that they were removed, but they are not. And they secrete this inflammation on the skin. And this inflammation starts to lead to collagen breakdown, start to contaminate other cells to become senescent as well. And this is all the causes that leads to the skin aging process. The senescence blocking of the peptide means that the OS1 is able to block this process. So the OS1 acts inside of the cells, avoiding them to accumulate as senescent cells in the skin. So what it's doing is helping your skin to deaccelerate this aging process. So we are avoiding cells to become senescent by repairing better the DNA and avoiding the damage of the cell, so the tissue continue to be younger, working as a healthier tissue. So this helps a lot on the sun exposure and process because the UV is what most causes damage on the skin. So if we are able to repair this damage that's coming from the UV radiation, we are blocking this senescence formation and we are blocking this accumulation of cells that will lead to the collagen breakdown and the sagging and the aging process of the skin.
Right. And you've published some more recent research on this since the last time we spoke with Carolina. You had a new study in 2023. You're starting to understand in more detail how this peptide is working to repair the UV damage and stop this senescent process, the senescent cascade from occurring. So could you just give us a little bit of detail about what your current understanding is and how this peptide is achieving this function?
Yeah, in this paper, this is a scientific publication that's very scientific. So this paper goes deep in understanding the biology and the mechanism of action of this peptide. So what we were able to see is like how this peptide is acting inside the cell to avoid the senescence accumulation, to avoid the accumulation of the zombie cells in the skin, and therefore they accelerate the aging process. So what we found out on our studies was that the peptide is regulating a specific protein inside the cells that's called PP2A. That's a phosphorylation protein. And so our research showed that when we treated aged skin with the peptide, we avoid the accumulation of the senescent cells. And what the peptide is doing is acting through a protein called PP2A, that's a phosphatase protein that regulate pathways inside of the cell that's responsible to the cell cycling of the life and division of the cells. So when we are accumulating damage, especially coming from the UV, usually AKT gets phosphorylated and this slow down the cell cycle progression and leads cells to become senescent. When we have the peptide activates this PP2A that can reduce the phosphorylation of AKT. And therefore, it can brings back the cells to continue the cell division. But it also repairs the DNA first. So it activates pathways of DNA repair, avoiding that damage that's being caused by UV or by aging to happen, making the cell to work like a better and proper and continue the cell division as a healthy cell. So basically what we are doing is cleaning up the damage and making the cell continue healthy and strong and avoiding to become a cell blocking, to become a cell that will stop cellular division, will start to secrete inflammation, and it will accelerate the aging process.
Yeah, right. And you mentioned both turning on repair mechanisms and turning off damage pathways and signals in the gene. And you did genetic analysis in this paper. You were looking at P16 and IL-6 gene expression. And there was a really interesting analysis that you've done in the combination of the Shield sunscreen product and the OS-01 peptide that found a significant reduction in the expression of these two genes, which I believe you call pro-aging genes. So let's go down this pathway a little bit. First, can you just tell us what P16 and IL-6 are?
So those are genes that are associated with the accumulation of more senescent cells, because the senescent cell, it has two things. It has the cell cycle arrested, meaning they stopped dividing, and P16 is regulating this cell division and also secrete inflammation. So IL-6 is a cytokine that's inflammatory cytokine. So when we look to the gene expression and we look to more genes than only these two ones, we kind of try to associate, you can associate if a skin is getting older, we'll have more of P16 and more IL-6 expression, meaning that if aging is happening, you have accumulation of more senescent cells in the skin. The readout, the looking of the skin will be like a skin that is sagging and wrinkled. But in the cellular level, in the molecular level, you can understand that there is more IL-6, more P16. So we are able then to understand, okay, when I have OS1, what's happening to these genes? What we usually see is a decrease on the expression of these genes because the OS1 is blocking that senescence process. So you have less cells being formed that are senescent and damaged, that accumulates P16 and also release IL-6 and inflammation. And because you have less of these cells, you decrease the gene expression. And that's the readout. That's how I can take a skin in the lab, test, and say that even after 5 days that this treatment is being effective to reduce the damage caused by either UV or by aging.
Right. So this is really fascinating, and it unveils the genetic pathways behind the why. It tells us the why. Yeah. We're seeing, as you mentioned, regulating senescence in P16, inflammation in the cytokine IL-6. This is really great science. And taking that up a level, you've also done an analysis with the OS-01 Shield product on actual human skin patches. You had one from a few different ages, 31 years old, 41 years old, 51 years old. I'd love to talk about the analysis you did there. I understand it's some preclinical data, it's early stage data, but this sounds to me like it's some of those samples you got from plastic surgery. Yeah. Is that correct?
Exactly. So when we are then producing when we are finishing a formulation, when we are finishing a product, we always like to, before test in humans, we test in vitro on those skin samples that we get from patients of different ages. So we kind of validate the efficacy of this combination of ingredients in the formula and the potential of this formula to reduce the accumulation of senescent cells, basically coming by the presence of the OS1 peptide in the formula. So we test this at the minimum 3 different ages. And this is the example that you have there that we tested on a 31 year, 41 and 51, if I'm not wrong. So when we received these skins, we were treating with the OS-01 Shield and even formulas before the final formula. We expose this skin to the UV radiation that will accelerate the aging. So exposing UV will increase P16, will increase IL-6, will change other genes as well on accelerating the aging. And we do see what's happening when we have the product, validating that the product will help to decrease and to block the accumulation of those senescent cells in the skin.
Right. Okay. And in some of the language that you're using to describe this, I feel like it's at a bit of a higher level language, getting away from the genetics, something that people might understand a bit better. And there's this concept of free radical scavenging. Yeah. Can you just introduce us to what that means in this system you've just described? Why is free radical scavenging important in this process of minimizing UV-related damage in the skin?
So the free radical scavenging is actually a test that we do in the lab to confirm that our formula and the ingredients in our formula, it's able to reduce the free radicals that are produced during UV radiation. So sun exposure, UV, you have UVB and UVA. UVA penetrates deeper on the skin and can lead to the formation of reactive oxygen species that generate free radicals. Those free radicals are molecules that can damage the cells. It's one of the molecules that will cause the damage inside the DNA of the cell and will lead the cell to become senescent. So what we do, what we were researching is how we can also prevent those free radicals that are being formed because of UVA to damage the cells. So that adding antioxidants to the formula can reduce the activity of the free radicals, avoiding the damage caused by UV. So what we do in the lab, what we research is like look to the actives, antioxidant, combination of antioxidants available to get to a formula that contains enough antioxidants that will avoid at the maximum the formation of these free radicals. And on the experiment that we run in the lab, it's basically like we use a compound that has a probe and we measure how much this antioxidant they are scavenging and reducing this molecule. So it turns from a color to another one, and then we can measure like the potential of this antioxidant. But we added these antioxidants to the formula, to the sunscreen, also to help, not only we want to block the UV, but any UV that's coming that can be leading to the production of free radicals. We are blocking also those free radicals to damage. And if there's some damage happening to the skin, the OS-1 peptide is there to repair this damage. So we have 3 layers of protection with this shield formula. We protect the UV to get inside the skin. If it gets any kind of damage and formation of free radicals, we neutralize these free radicals with the use of antioxidants. If damage is made to the cells, the OS-1 peptide is there to repair the damage.
Right. That's fascinating. I love how you explain that. There's 3 stages of defense available in this product that you've created, which is highly unique. I mean, to be able, we know we can block UV damage with sunscreens. That's not entirely novel. There's probably combinations of antioxidants we know we can put on the skin. One of the ones you use is vitamin C, and we'll dive into those in a moment. But having a unique combination of those that you've created through testing on human skin in the lab, and then having the OS-1 peptide back that up to repair any damage that gets through that 3-step process, that's pretty impressive. So that's a really fascinating way to think of this sunscreen as it's the 3 tiers of defense. And in using your technology, you were able to come up with 5 antioxidants to stick in that formulation. I'm just going to list off what they are. They're vitamin C, green tea extract, acai, taro fruit, and bisabolol. So just, you don't have to go into each of those in detail, but tell us a little bit about how you came up with that list of those 5 things.
So every time we are searching for new actives, we are always testing those actives in our lab to make sure that they are not causing any side effect, to make sure that the combination of actives will give the end result that we want. So we tested way more than these 5 actives in our lab. But we got to this combination that we saw a result on the scavenging of the free radicals that was way superior than other benchmarks that we were testing. So it kind of was experimental. We were testing individual actives, the combination of different antioxidants, until we got to this 5 combination was the one that was performing better. And it's very important, this process of testing each active, because, for instance, vitamin C is a very unstable molecule. And depending from the source that you're getting, like the vendor that you're getting, a lot of times the vitamin C, it's already oxidized and there's no antioxidant function on that vitamin C. So we are making sure that the actives that we are choosing, we're testing them in-house. So there's still actives in the even in the final formula. So we are really delivering and claiming something that was tested in the lab. So this 5 was just out of a lot of tests that we did, was the 5 that together outperform in terms of the potential to reduce free radicals.
Right. Okay. And in the role of your technology in that process, how do you view your position as an innovator and having unique resources, these human skin equivalents you can grow in the lab, the samples from real humans, this UV damage setup, the genetic analysis you can do, the measuring of the reactive oxygen species and their neutralization. Just tell us about how unique that position is for OneSkin and all the different sunscreen developers out there. It seems pretty unique.
Yeah, and it's very unique because we're able to have the data, the scientific data and validation on the efficacy and safety of all our products. And this also ensures that when we bring to the market, it's a good product. So we're not bringing something blind that we don't know if the product will work or not. So the high retention that we have of our customers liking our products come from this rigorous process of developing the formulas that we ensure that at the end we have a formula and a product that will be that will have efficacy and that will deliver the claims that we are giving for the product. So most of the companies, they don't have their own data on the claims that they are doing. So they lack of this knowledge and this information that brings transparency to our customers to understand that what's inside that formula, how it was validated, and then at the end, getting more satisfaction from the users of the formula.
We often find that companies founded by scientists can do what you've just described in many different forms. It might be in red light therapy, it might be in new supplement formulations. Here it is in skincare, and that's a really inspiring resource that you've brought through your own expertise and your team's expertise. So thank you for sharing with that with us. And I want to pivot away a bit from product-specific questions and just hit a few points that are a bit more general. And one of those is there's a lot of research on photo aging and UV damage in the skin. What are some of the more recent insights that we've gained in how sunlight, in particular, UV damage from sunlight, is aging the skin? You mentioned some of the genetic analysis you've done before. Yeah. It would be things along those lines that we're interested to hear about. What's some of the latest?
Yeah, I think understanding what UVA and UVB is causing to the skin. So UVA can go deeper layers on the skin, go to the dermal layer, and can cause damage on the fibroblast level, accelerating the aging process on the skin, while UVB can penetrate less on the skin. It's mainly causing the sunburn and damages to the upper layer of the skin. So far, one thing that before was not so known is the broad spectrum that a sunscreen can have or not. Is the sunscreen only protecting the UVB or is also protecting the UVA radiation? So it's very important to look to the sunscreen and see if there is this broad spectrum, because if you are only protecting from UVB, yes, you will not have a sunburn when you go out of the sun, but you may have a lot of UVA damage that accelerate the aging and does not cause this sunburn. So the use of especially mineral sunscreen like zinc oxide, titanium oxide, they give protections for both UVA and UVB. So making sure like UVA and UVB are being like protected on the sunscreen. This is very important because you avoid sunburn, but also you avoid the photo aging caused by the UV radiation. Also having more knowledge about the sun, the SPF, the sun protector factor. Like there are a lot of like misunderstanding about SPF 50, 30, 100. Should I get one that's 120? So basically SPF, when you start even on SPF 30, you're already blocking 97% of the UVB radiation. When you go to 50, you block 1% more. You go from 97 to 98. So more important than having like a sunscreen that is SPF 30, 50, or 100 is the amount of sunscreen that you're applying on top of the skin to really give you the protection that you want. So if you have a sunscreen that's SPF 50 or above, but you just apply a very thin layer, you're not getting protection from that sunscreen. If you have a sunscreen SPF 30 and you apply the correct amount of sunscreen, you will get more protection than if you have a lighter on a higher SPF. Because it's the blocking, it's the amount of the ingredients that are blocking the UV that is really giving protection to your skin. So having more knowledge on like the amount of sunscreen that you can apply or not and reapply, it's giving more benefits than just choosing through the SPF. Being SPF, that's broad spectrum, there is also now, besides the SPF, there is also another factor, like you can see usually PA++. This is the protective grade factor for UVA. So the SPF is only telling you about the UVB. UVA is telling by this PA. So taking in consideration and looking that on sunscreen, you're getting more protection and you're protecting more your skin.
Wow, I learned a lot there because I wasn't actually familiar with the language around SPF only applying to UVB radiation. So we'll look up some resources and be sure to share that. And as you're speaking, I'm just taking a peek down here at my OS-01 Shield, and I'm noticing that's an SPF 30. And yeah, I don't see the rating for the second factor you mentioned.
Yeah, it's it's written broad spectrum, right?
Yes.
It's written broad spectrum. The PA, we on the first packaging was not there yet, but we know it's a PA++. We got that result already from the tests.
Right. Okay. And I'm assuming that that's a pretty high score.
Yes. Yes. You can have 1, 2, 3. You can have 4+ as well. The 4 plus to the 3, it's kind of like a very slight difference. You want always something that at least have 3 pluses.
Great. Thank you for that. And you also mentioned using the correct amount of sunscreen. So here I have my bottle of OS-01 Shield. How much of this am I using to cover my face, neck, and ears?
So a easy way of like knowing the amount, if you spread like a line of the sunscreen on a finger, like 2 lines, 2 fingers is the exact amount that you need to cover your whole face, including ears and your neck as well. So if you use that, because it's hard to measure the amount versus the area, the surface area, but having this measurement of like spreading like 2 fingers, it's a right way of knowing that you're applying the correct amount.
Wow, thank you for that answer. I'll take that and be using that for sure in my own use of it. So just will add that I have been using the product and it's very light. It feels great going on my skin. I actually have pretty sensitive skin to things like sunscreen, and my skin hasn't reacted at all. And my partner, she hates smells, is very, very sensitive to fragrances, and there's none in there. It's a really neutral product, very easy to use. I've been very pleased using it.
Yeah, we are very careful when we are developing our formulas to make sure that it's not causing any sensitization and any adverse effect. So we are able to see this like doing tests in our lab, but also all formulas go to a small human clinical study that it's a repeat, RIPT, repeat intense. I need to see what's the
you can look it up and we'll put it in the edits. Yeah, look it up and tell us.
This RIPT test may basically test on people, like if you repeat using the product on a skin area, if it causes any kind of sensitization or not. So we always run that. So we are sure that our formulas are will not cause sensitization to others. And also it's fragrance free, because fragrance can be very irritative, especially for sensitive skin. So none of our formulas has contain fragrance and a lot of like ingredients that are already known to cause irritation. So we are very careful on the process of making the formula to ensure that we are not adding any ingredient that could cause sensitization. And at the end, we always have formulas that are very lightweight, easy to spread. One of the main things with mineral sunscreen is that a lot of time it creates a white cast. So especially zinc oxide, it can create that white cast that's not desired. So we're able with this formula to get a formula that spreads easy. And we have even the two versions, one tinted and one untinted. The tinted, it gives a little bit of color more to help on the spreading of the formula and to not have this white cast. It does not give a coverage of a foundation, but it helps like for some skin that has more tone, it helps to avoid this white cast that usually comes with mineral sunscreen. And that's why it's also hard to get like mineral sunscreen on higher SPF, because the amount of zinc oxide gets too high. And then you always have like that white cast that's coming from the zinc oxide.
All right. Thank you. That's really interesting. 1 second here.
Yeah.
All right. Just a few more questions here for you, Alessandra. And one is a big picture question, because we like thinking about the future of technology at Longevity Blog. It gets us excited. There's so many things coming down the pipeline. You understand peptides pretty well. And we notice in our own research that the word peptides being used more and more in skincare. It's also used in sports recovery, many other areas. What do you think more broadly the future of peptides is for the longevity technology space?
Yeah, peptides are a very interesting molecule because it's a bioactive molecule that's very safe because it's made of amino acids. That's like a normal component of our proteins of our body. So our body recognizes amino acids pretty well. So the peptides can have, like, depending on their sequence, can have different bioactivities. So they're very interesting type of molecule to be used not only in cosmetic, but for other applications where you can find that peptides that can target different kind of proteins and can activate different pathways inside our body to help maximize the potential, the cellular function, basically. So we started, like, we chose peptides as the type of molecule because of that, because they are bioactive and they are safe and they are compatible with our body. We are continuing. We found OS-01, that's a proprietary peptide that we saw that reduced accumulation of the damaged cells, also known as senescent cells. But senescent cells is just one of the hallmarks of aging. We have 12 others. So one thing, like for instance, at OneSkin that we are looking is how we can have other peptides that can work synergistically with the peptide 14 in other different pathways that are also related to aging, to even maximize more the function of the skin cells and to keep the skin functioning better and younger for longer. So we are continuing researches looking on peptides, on other peptides to combine maybe in the future with the OS1 and potentialize the effect of OS1.
Right. Okay. And so looking forward in this future, developing more peptides, we're hearing from you. We're at a very early stage in understanding peptides and skincare, and that there are even more candidates for, let's say, complementary effects with the OS-01 peptide. And do you have some candidates now? Or what does that research look like for you over the next 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, we are like, so the process of OneSkin, we were founded in 2016. We spent the first 5 years like doing the research on our skin platforms, on understanding skin aging, and identifying the OS1 peptide. So this took like us 5 years. And in 2021, we launched our first product. Fast forward now, we are at the end of 2023. We have 5 products that we developed. So the past 2-3 years, we worked a lot on how to use this OS1 in topical applications to promote skin health of your face, your body, around the eye, and a sun protection. And now we are restarting more like this second stage of research. So we are expecting in more 1-2 years, like have new molecules to use associated with the OS1 peptide.
All right, that's very exciting. We'll be sure to introduce our audience when you have those discoveries to share. So thank you for that, Alessandra. And as we move to close out the interview, I just wanted to ask you 2 more personal questions about yourself. We love to hear from our experts on how they're thinking about their own longevity. And everyone's going to want to know, first off, what you do for your own skin. So tell us a little bit about whatever you'd like to share of your own, let's say, protocol or stack that you use to look after your skin.
So my skin routine is very simple and it's based on OneSkin. I used to have a very sensitive skin, and this was one of my drivers to be interested on researching skin. And for some time, I went to dermatologists, and I came back with like 7 routine steps on the skin, layer of like products, the use of retinol. My skin cannot tolerate retinol. I was always getting more redness, more flaking from my skin, and really like was a process that was always going around and not getting better. Since we developed the first formula of the OS1 face, I simply switched my routine to a simple, basic routine using our products that we are developing. So basically, at the end of the day, I always clean my skin with OS1 prep. I use OS1 face first, and then OS1 eye around the eye. And that's it for my face. At night, I only use these 2 products. And in the morning, I exercise in the morning. So after I shower, I pass again OS1 face, OS1 eye, and I add the shield as a sunscreen. Usually on my daily routine, I don't use that much makeup. I like to put a mascara on and keep it very simple. If like going out, I use a little bit more of foundation and so on. And then I use OS1 body on my body. And that's it. I stick to the OneSkin routine, and I have been doing this for the past 3 years. And I know I'm biased, but I'm very happy with the results that I'm having.
Okay, sure. I'm sure that you are, and that it makes sense that you believe in your products, that you would use it. Have you done any measurements before and after? I mean, you have access to some pretty interesting technologies to measure the age of your skin.
Yeah, it's so interesting that I do have like pictures and like cell phone videos and things like that. but I never had a visual scan like before and after done to my skin. So I never measure like the official visual scan. I only have pictures that, and I wish I have done before I even started the first time using our products, way before, because now whatever is my baseline is already better. I'm sure it's better than it was in the past, but I cannot measure like backwards. But we are even like trying to thinking of having here at our office our own vision to like for influencers, people that come visit, they already start scanning. So maybe eventually I'll do my measurement. What I have measured is my biological age through my whole body. Like I usually use glycan age. And I also start measuring this only in 2021. So I was already like taking more care of my health than, let's say, even like 10 years ago. I think today I'm more like aware of my health status than when I was on my 20s. So my biological age is very impressive because it's 15 years younger than my chronological age. So I'm happy with the things I'm doing because apparently I'm healthy.
Great. I think you've got me beat in the glycan age test. I think I'm around 10 to 12 years younger than my chronological age. So you are doing some things very well and correctly, clearly. And that's the last question we wanted to ask you was, you're a scientist working in the longevity technology space, and you're going to have some items in your routine that you've added, thinking about your own longevity strategy and putting that into practice. So as we close out, would you be willing to share 2 to 3 things that you do each day or each week to look after your own longevity?
Yeah. So the first change that I did was exercise every day. So before when I was, one thing that I do is exercise every day. Before I used to always be enrolled on the gym, but I would go like once per week, sometimes twice a week. I would miss 3 weeks and then go back. So since 2018, like daily exercise, at least 30 minutes per day, this is something that I changed and I see the benefits of having more energy. I also switched to a diet that's more Mediterranean, more pescatarian, and more based on vegetables. One other thing that I do is take care of my sleep, make sure that I'm sleeping 7 hours at least at night. And to help my sleep, I also take magnesium supplements to help to have a deep quality sleep. And more recently, I have been tracking my glucose levels. So I'm wearing like a glucose monitor and I'm using some tips to avoid glucose spikes. So I have been very healthy, but in the last 2 years, I also got a little bit of sugar craving. I think this was like since the pandemic. And now like tracking my glucose and using some tips like drinking a glass of water with vinegar in the morning, always starting my meal with vegetables first. I really have seen like a big decrease on this sugar craving that I used to have mainly in the afternoons and in the evenings. So these are like some of the things that I have been doing and I'm doing now.
That is a very impressive list. You're doing great in terms of your longevity. That's a great list. Some things that are working for you, and we're really glad you shared that with us. And also grateful to hear from your expertise as a scientist at OneSkin talking about OS-01 Shield today. Alessandra, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate it a lot.